Okay, welcome everybody. Guess what? We said we were going to do a bunch of podcasts and
One a week.
That's what we're going to do. Well, we sucked at that, but I got my partner in crime, Holzfer, next to me. So Kyle, we got 2 podcasts knocked out this year, and they were all about you.
Jackson. Pretty easy to talk about.
Yeah, that was fun, huh? It was pretty cool hearing all the positive comments about, just the story and
I can't believe how many people were interested.
Well, I was, and so that was cool. And speaking about interested, we obviously have a pretty fun gig down here, right? We get to build snowmobiles. We sell lots of parts, and we get to go ride snowmobiles and show people our world of riding. And so one big one every year is, talking in the sled build side of things is, what is next and what our goals and plans are for our personal sleds. Usually you're so busy that you don't even get time to build a personal sled. There's your 3 stock ones right there. But we obviously put a lot of effort into building, our customer sleds, and then, the big one, my sled, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, there was obviously a lot of excitement this year with a new chassis, and there's a couple things, right? There's excitement with a new chassis, but there's also like, well, what the heck can we do to it? How light can we make it? And we're always constantly trying to figure out that balance of not making it too light where you're sacrificing durability, which we've never done that, and we get that a lot, right? Like, how many of those carbon skids do you break? None.
No, I mean, you're going to break anything on any snowmobile. And
yeah,
stuff, like, they hold up really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to talk about today, guys, was kind of just, our approach in building, again, a super lightweight sled. The weapon choice for me, as I've told you guys for quite a few years now, is the 900, and which is interesting, right? We posted the video about the kind of the reveal of the sled. We haven't talked about weight or anything like that, but a lot of the comments were, do you prefer that or a boost sled? And for me, I mean, the boost is, it's what everybody has been wanting, something from the factory, or a warranty, and something that runs perfect, and they do. Like, yesterday we had a ball on boost sleds, but all I kept thinking was how I wish I was on my lightweight sled yesterday. And, no matter how much you do, and we talked about this in one of our previous podcasts this year, was no matter what you do to a boost sled, we can do all the lightweight stuff. You still have the weight of the turbo. And so, again, what's really nice about a 900 is, anytime you can increase power to weight ratio, that's something that you can literally feel. So let's start off with let's talk about weights. Okay. Cause weights is, it's something that, a lot of people base some things on. Here's what the challenging one for me is I had no idea kind of what we were going to be able to do, right? There's with a completely different chassis, plastics, tunnel, cooler, there's the sled, which is interesting, right? The Matryx is actually heavier than an Axis. And so there was some things that the plastics ended up being heavier. And in general, I think the sled was 7 pounds, 5 to 7 pounds heavier, I believe.
Not sure.
It was close to that. But anyway, like looking at the weight of a 155 Axis / I believe was like 426 is where they ended up. So like a 165, you're generally about 5 pounds heavier, so about 431. And the weight of this sled came in at 375 pounds.
We made it heavier.
So 375 pounds, not the lightest sled we've built. Still the lightest one to date has been Jenny Craig. That one, had more carbon fiber, a lighter motor in the 800 versus the 850, and that thing, still has been the benchmark. But, this, thinking over 50 pounds taken off of this sled. And I want you to talk about a little bit, like, the task, right? It's so crazy. Like, we take a perfectly good snowmobile that literally rolled off the assembly line 3 weeks ago.
Came out of the crate.
We bring it here.
And tear every nut, bolt, zip tie, wire, light, throttle cable, everything off of it.
Yeah. And, I love the comments. Well, by the time you're done with it, it's not even a Polaris.
Yeah, it is.
Well, yeah, it is, actually.
It's
actually
geometry.
a really badass Polaris, actually, is what it is. And so what, for you, we wanted to do this podcast so you guys hear the weight, right? So it's 375. It's over 50 pounds lighter than a standard Matryx, with a 900. Titanium from Alternative Impact pretty much everywhere, a carbon skid. We retroed the Skins 9.5 tank from the Axis chassis, which that was a little bit of a chore.
Lots of cutting plastic and building tabs and, yeah, lots of trimming.
Yeah. And so I wanted to do this podcast specifically after we both got to ride it. And, that's one thing. You get to build all these sleds, and then what is even cooler is to ride it.
Also very nerve-wracking.
It is, ain't it?
I mean, as confident as you are and as many as you do and as much attention to detail as you pay, there's a lot of moving parts.
Well, and Kyle, to think about that, and, I hope you remember, because I do. We're up on the hill. I just get you were riding your boost sled. I was first day on the 900. You did some crazy gnarly line, and I come behind you, and at the top, we high five, and we're sitting there, and we're looking off into like this beautiful area we get to ride, and we're sitting on top of this gnarly line, and I look over at you, and I'm like, thank you, and you're like, for what? I'm like, dude, it's amazing that we can literally tear this snowmobile down to the bulkhead, change every single component to in the hopes of making it lighter and cooler and like rely on it as an everyday snowmobile.
Yeah. Well, that means a lot too, because it is a lot of work. It's stressful too, mentally, because there's a lot there, from the crankshaft to the handlebars. One bolt is all it takes.
Yeah. And
so when you're working with tie, it's a little bit different too.
It is
bolts, because it's
torque specs and just all of that.
Yeah, they're just
different.
A little bit weird.
It's funny how we have to do the tie with on the torquing side of things. We actually torque it with the steel bolt, back the steel bolt back out, and then
through the reverse order, one at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I want you to kind of let's start with the motor. Let's do a breakdown of that. We did another a Carl's 900 again. But I just keep going a little bit further on this 900 deal. Talk about that.
So the cases, the motor brand new, comes apart. Cases go to Carl's. He's porting now, like a standard 900 kit is ported, just exhaust side. Now you're sending it in, with your air box, getting your air box opened up. Cases on the intake side, like, kind of giving everything a little buff and shine in there.
Yep.
Then we used a 650 crank, which is 0.4 of a pound lighter. So that's big on rotating. Tie bolts in the case. The Carl's 900 top end with ported motor, or ported exhaust again, trimmed exhaust valves, bigger Y pipe. What else is there on the motor?
Yeah, so on the motor, like, so really the difference between like my kit that is in my personal sled and a kit that we sell to a consumer, mostly like you said, so I send the top case half and it gets ported and matched. The cylinder is essentially the same. The head is an SLP head with a 900 dome on it. The white pipe, my white pipe's cleaned up a little bit to match the cylinder, but really, to be honest, pretty close. But then adding the 650 crank, the case porting, the airbox port, it's just matching, right? It's like, and those little things, it's interesting every time we talk about it, like it's so much work for that little extra, and it's not a ton, but it's obviously something, right?
And like with that too, kind of the whole topic of, I don't know how many people are like, how much more horsepower does it have? What's it have on the dyno? And it's like, it's not like it's 50 horse, and I don't even know what the number would ever be, but you have to ride them. Because, like, I've never seen somebody or let somebody ride, like, a 900 and them be like, oh, there's really not a difference. It's just the throttle response is so quick. They run so clean. Like, the guy that I sold my last year's 900 to, he has a big, full-out built turbo sled, and he's in love with that 900. And it's not like it makes more power or flips over backwards quicker. It just, they're a fun snowmobile to ride, and they're super quick and responsive.
Quick. And, that's, we'll get to that. I was obviously really excited to ride it, but I was really excited to get you to ride it. You've become very picky on your machines. And
way too picky.
We have fun with that, and it's what makes our setups better. And we compare notes, and it's why our stuff works really good, right? Mm-hmm. So that kind of starts with the motor, and then kind of coming outside the motor, we talk about all of our lightweight rotating stuff. Again, it's for me, the Matryx custom carbon stuff is just, it's one of those mandatory things, best bang for the buck, that really, like, when you hear my sled, it's like electric. It is so fast and quick. And it's all of those little things that make it like that. So, we do the lightweight rotating, package with both the primary clutch and secondary clutch, and then Zollinger, they've really stepped up on their game with all of their stuff. So my secondary clutch has a bunch of their components in it. They do the flywheel and the brake rotor.
Very key part, the brake rotor.
Brake rotor, yep. And we'll talk about that. The brake rotor, the stock brake rotor is, not only is it heavy, but it also holds heat. Yeah. And when it holds heat, especially with how aggressive we are riding these sleds these days, that's what gives you brake fade, and you can warp the disc and all of that stuff. So not only does it make it lighter, it dissipates heat quicker, which allows your brake pads to be a little happier. Yep.
A little bit.
But another thing that's really cool, so Alternative Impact, they get the game as well. I mean, literally, I have a titanium nut holding the flywheel on.
That weighs nothing.
Yeah,
it's one of the things you can carry around and forget you're even carrying, so you drop it.
Yeah, and it's pretty neat, and it's like, and it's interesting. There's a lot of people who will listen to this, or when they see a post and they're like, well, why did you do that, or why did you do that? Well, if you ask that 50 times, there's a pound, and it's like, well, I love when I'll just go not eat a cheeseburger for a day. I'm like, yeah, but the rider weight and the snowmobile weight are two different things. They're two different things. No matter if you're 150 pounds or 300 pounds, if your snowmobile is 450 pounds or 425 pounds, you're still having to move 25 pounds of snowmobile, no matter what weight you are as a rider. And so that's something that, again, I've learned from doing this so many years. And what's so cool is, like, literally you get it done, and I'm so anxious to weigh it, but more importantly, I'm just more anxious to ride it. And it's so cool, like, when you literally load the sled into the trailer, you can feel the weight of the sled. Mm-hmm. And so, all right, back to, okay, so lightweight rotating the motor. We're still running a stock pipe on this setup. A lot of guys are asking, why don't you run the twins with the 900? And we just haven't put the time into the mapping side of things to make the twins work with the 900. There's some people who have done it, and I think, from what so far from a power wise and to be honest, and this kind of sounds funny when you're talking about, paying hundreds of dollars for bolts, but from a cost standpoint too, when you add another, $1,800 in twin pipes and on top of a $4,000 900, now we're into like turbo price, right? Where the single pipe with the Diamond S silencer is really kind of our go-to on that 900. And it is really responsive and torquey and just flat out runs. And so, and from a weight standpoint, that's again, my goal in this snowmobile is the weight side of things. So, that's kind of where we've gone there. Let's talk about the one-off things. There's quite a few of them here, right?
There's some bolts that have been in a lot of snowmobiles.
Yep. The old bolt bins they got pretty empty this year.
Yeah.
We used a lot of them.
A lot of them.
I think there's probably, if I had to count, 5 bolts on there that maybe aren't tie that I didn't have, or nuts or something. But this one we went kind of all out, all in. You got the tank to work, which was really cool.
Yeah.
That sounded easy on the surface. Well, let's just cut some plastic and rig a tank on there from last year. And I want to go back to the tank. The reason that I really love that 9.5 skins tank. Yeah, I like the narrowness. It does hold 1.5 gallons less, which big deal, right? I mean, you could put 1.5 gallon less in your stock tank. That's fine. But I like the ergonomics of it. But most importantly, what I really enjoy is centralizing the mass by getting the oil bottle off of the clutch cover, putting the oil in the center of the sled. It holds just over a quart, so plenty for a ride in a day. And it just, it puts everything together in the center of the sled, and it's something from a handling side of things you can really do. But we ran into a couple things there. Tell them about it.
Because the way the Matryx tank is and the way that fuel pump goes in there with the hard lines, the fuel pump wouldn't work. So then we had to steal an Axis fuel pump out of one of your other sleds.
That snowmobile is decommissioned right now.
So we prioritized that and stole an Axis fuel pump. And then we realized the plug-in's different.
The plug-in was different.
So we had to splice on we had to cut the end off a Matryx pump and splice it onto an Axis pump and hope that the 4 different color wires that went to 4 other different well we figured out to put in the right spot, and it ran.
Yeah.
So there was that. That worked. But
well, and then here we go, right? Like, so you got all this beautiful plastic work that Polaris has worked hard on to just really streamline the looks
comes
of this
over
thing.
the fuel cap.
Yeah, and here comes Kyle with the
air saw
and cuts all that out. But you really cleaned it up, and it really looks about as trick and custom and
that's a mod.
It's a mod. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so all of that worked well. What's pretty cool is there's a lot of things from the Axis that crossed over to the Matryx, and anytime you have a new chassis, that's kind of what you're hoping for, especially when the Axis was so dang good, is not to screw it up. So we were able to use our titanium steering posts, pitman arm, the front end, our rear suspension,
the carbon drag link.
Yep.
Worked. How many sleds has that been on?
Oh man, probably since 2015, the carbon sled that drag link has been on. So it's a little carbon rod with aluminum rod ends, and it's cool. I will say from a time standpoint, I think the sled took the most. I mean, over Christmas break, I worked on this thing for 3 days, and you've got many days in it. And one of our good clients, he's bought a couple sleds of my personal sleds. He's like, so I'm going to come next week and pick up your 900 from you. I'm like, no, no, you're not. I am riding this one. We'll just build another one. I'm like, oh my God, it's not. This year, obviously, we had the challenges of getting parts.
Yeah, I think if the parts were piled up and it wasn't just like coming and going to it, it would come together pretty quick.
I think, I agree, and I think 80% of this build are parts that we can get, right? But the other 20% of the bolts and the grinding and the custom and all of this, that is what really takes this, from the Corvette to the McLaren, right?
Yeah.
And that's what is just, gosh dang, it takes so much time. And every time I get into it, you think like, I come in the shop in the morning to try to get some things done on it before, the chaos of the day. And I'm like, I just want to get the front end on. But, I change every bolt and then, it ends up being such a project, every little step.
Yeah.
So, and then, we got some new things, right? We got the Skins helium hood, which is really cool. Ends up dropping the weight from 14 pounds down to 7, which is interesting because, that's still heavier than our Axis stuff last year. The side panels are heavier. The fenders, the body fenders are heavier. So again, I think the streamline of the Matryx chassis and, how it's taller and skinny and all that stuff is really cool. But, the material is heavier. And so, I think there's still some room for improvement there. So we'll be looking at doing some potential things there. I would love to see this sled in the 360s. To be honest, I was hoping it would be there, but that's again, it's year one. And that's the exciting thing is right now the sled is pretty incredible. One thing I will say, and I think we're going to start transitioning into the riding side of it, because we've kind of covered the components, right? So pretty much anything that has been replaced, anything steel has been replaced with either aluminum, carbon, or titanium. And then
front end and skid wise.
Yeah. So front end we tried doing I'm running an alternative impact titanium front end. Excuse me. And from the weight standpoint, man, they do a pretty incredible job there. So that's been cool. It's stock geometry. So I like the geometry of the Skins free flow front end. And what it does, but from a weight standpoint, I really obviously was trying to just do everything possible. And so the Skins front end is about the weight of a stock front end, which again, the stock front end is super light. But this one with titanium and their spindle ended up being 3 pounds lighter on each side. So, which was a total of 6. So that was pretty big. The carbon skid, again, we dropped 14 pounds with the Fox shocks. So, it's crazy to think about, 50 pounds off of an already lightweight snowmobile, right? Mm-hmm. And then the riding weight, that's another number that we still need to get. But the riding weight, I think, that's the really impressive one, looking at that. So I wanted to talk to you and see, so you're like me, right? You put all this effort into it, and you're putting all this effort into a sled that you're building for your dollar bet competition.
Yeah.
Which is,
I should be kind of, instead of making it perfect, I should be screwing some things up. Leaving them bars loose.
Freaking screw your face up, pal. So, it's that nervousness of what the first ride's going to be.
Yeah.
Right? Is it going to be what we hope? And we've done enough of these now. And this last year, my 900 was, and I hate saying this, but everyone is better than the next because we just keep making it better and learning. And although Princess Leia 2 years ago, that one was still my lightest 900 because it was in the Axis chassis. That one ended up being 368, so I'm a little bit heavier with the Matryx chassis just because of the plastic work. But that sled really set the bar from the 850/900 side of things. Last year's sled just ran good. It was just a really strong snowmobile. I didn't have as much tie on it, and then this one we kind of went all out. And so let me hear your first ride reaction.
Well, I think I was riding my Boost that day, and you were like, "Oh, you got to give this thing a ride." And I don't know if people really know, but I'm not very good at riding a snowmobile without scratching it. So I don't really like riding your snowmobiles very much, but I'm like, I got to give it a try.
Well, and so you set this up perfectly because so I literally pulled a line and the sled was just like, it was what I literally dream about from September till the first day I get to ride it, right? Like, dude, I'm jacked. I'm so excited. And I come back down. We're parked on right edge in this like gnarly hole that last year we were a mess in with Sam and Toby, right? Upside down. Everything was bent. There were rocks everywhere. And here we are. I'm just excited. And I hand you the keys. And I'm like,
that was a bad idea.
That was a really bad idea. You've never ridden it, not on flat ground or anything. We're parked on this 80-degree slope on edge. I'm like, dude, go up that thing. And true, typical Kyle passion. All right, let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because I actually had switched with another guy, and I was riding his stock sled.
Yep.
So I had a pretty good baseline. Well, I guess a Boost is stock now, too. So I was riding NA sled of a different guy's, and we swapped, and there is a big difference.
Well, I mean, so what's okay? So there's weight and 900 and all this stuff. What was what was the thing like? First punch of the gas, first like go through the trees. What did you notice?
I really felt like I've gotten super picky with clutching, and I felt like we searched that we're trying to find that spot where it's going to rev the quickest but still pull. And that's a really fine line to build a clutch setup that revs but doesn't do anything, or a clutch setup that revs slower, loads hard, and pulls, but we're trying to push to that ceiling before it's not pulling and building belt heat and whatnot. So, I mean, I felt the clutching, like the first time I got on it, I'm like, man, this thing revs so quick. It's got to be buzzy. But then, like, how quick it was taking off, I'm like, well, it was spot on. I didn't feel like it was right there at that fine line. And it wasn't above it. It was revving perfect. It was tacking. It was holding RPM, which, I mean, for one, that felt really good because, I mean, man, you can go days, a month of every day touching and screwing with clutching and never find that. Like, you feel like you're there, and then you try something different, and then you're off, and then you go back to it, and it's pretty good. And then you're like, I can still make it better, and you try something else. But it felt really good, which is pretty cool. I mean, second day,
right
2 days,
out of the gate.
2 days riding the sled, break-in ride, then that ride, and the clutching was really, really good. And then, I don't know, just like remembering, I hadn't rode a 900 yet this year. I honestly don't think. So just feeling like, oh yeah, this is like, because you kind of think the same thing. It's not that much different. And then you get on it, and it's like, okay, yeah, I remember what this is like. I need to get my sled built.
Yeah.
But, and then, like, setup-wise, if we want to move on to that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's not that I've wanted to, but I've just gotten so picky on what a snowmobile feels like just from riding them so much that, like, anything that feels different, I notice, and then it's like kind of evaluating it and feeling like, okay, so what is different? Like what occasions is something different happening, or where am I expecting something to happen from the input I'm putting into the chassis and it's not? And the one thing I felt with it is that it wanted to drive forward, and like where I could get another sled to kind of turn, like with a really small input and just a little bit of footwork and like a little bit of counter steer, I felt like my sled turned easier, which then I was like, oh, so you had your bolt in the lower hole. So you had a little bit less ski pressure there. You had a lot more front shock pressure. And I that's why I went to you, and I'm like, I just feel like it doesn't turn. And it's not that it doesn't turn. I just felt like I could get it. It was super quick and reactive, like when you actually wanted to turn. But those small uphill,
slow stuff.
That slow stuff was.
It wants to push.
It wanted to push. Yeah, like you could counter steer, and I felt like I had to really put a lot of input into it to get it to do little things. But obviously, like once it would turn, it would. I mean, that thing will cut a corner like nothing.
Quick.
Yeah.
And this is why it's really fun riding with someone who can feel those types of things. And it's taken you a long time to get to that point, right? The first year you showed up here on that clapped out 17.
It wouldn't have mattered. Nothing would have mattered.
It wouldn't have mattered. But, you spend enough time on the snow like we do. And it was really cool. So we've tried some things this year. I've got a couple sleds set up with the front torque arm located in the lower hole in the chassis. And so what that does is that's basically, it's kind of splitting the difference between a pro and a chaos a little bit. It's putting more pressure down at the front track shock, which takes pressure off of the front skis to give that sled a light, easy feel. But like what you say, and we feel this with a chaos too, right? The chaos, you really, like if you tried to go like on flat ground and you're trying to steer, the thing wants to like kind of push. And it's a give and take. Everything is a give and take about suspension. And so kind of the philosophy behind trying that was, I love a lightweight feel of the snowmobile. And so what we ended up with, and so once you rode it, I was riding something else, I get right back on my snowmobile, and this is what we do a lot, right?
Yeah.
Just to compare notes. I felt what you were talking about, and now, like you said, I could ride through that, and I just have to change my riding a little different. But, so then we made the determination, well, let's keep our front track shock pressure the same, right? So we'll have quite a bit in there to keep that front end light, but let's go back up into the stock hole.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's how I have the sled set up now. That's what I'll be testing and trying for the next ride. And I think it's going to be even crazier. And so to your point, the one thing that really amazes me about this snowmobile, especially when going back from your boost sled that day and the stock sled, was even with the front torque arm in the lower hole, which should make it wheelie more, the sled just went forward. Like it just went forward at a ferocious pace, and was, as long as you were like moving, it was very predictable. I agree, there was a little bit of unpredictability in the slower stuff, like come on, turn. Like turn. And it wouldn't, so then you had to go wrong foot forward, counter steer, get it to turn.
That's what I felt. Yeah, the weirdness in the neutral position.
Yeah.
And like looking at all the components, right? Like we messed with everything that touches the snow. So like the camber on the spindle, like that could play a huge role in it. Even just the geometry of where that's at. The skid, like we've seen it time and time again. There's just so much going on in that skid, and I mean, an eighth of an inch different on a track shock rod. And we've got a completely different feeling snowmobile. So just like going through, like kind of in your head, you're going into it with an open mind, but it's crazy how quick it comes to you, the things that feel different. Well, and then trying to decide whether you like it or not, because you're just, for me, there's just the way we ride. You don't think about it. Like you're not telling yourself, okay, I need to do this, I need to counter steer. Like you're just reacting, and you do inputs to the snowmobile that you're not even thinking about. So it's weird going to a completely different snowmobile. But there's going to be things you find that you like and dislike. For me.
100%. And what's funny is, so my very first initial ride, literally like to go do the shakedown, I had some pretty different suspension settings that I wanted to try, and the sled was not fun. It was very planted, didn't really want to wheelie, and just was kind of, I mean, it would go up anything, but it was just boring. And so it was crazy just making a little shift in there. It turned it from, just a mundane kind of setup to, oh my gosh, this is what I was hoping for. And it was really just, I've got air shocks on there, so it's just adjusting air pressure, but that's no different than just changing a spring, right? I made it softer in the rear, a little bit more front track shock pressure, and it really just changed the entire balance of the snowmobile and made it so damn fun. And so I think that's cool. And, I love that we're able to, when you talk about the clutching side of things, it's funny how, we've sold a couple hundred clutch kits this year, and people have been really, really happy. And it's because of all the bickering you and I go back and forth on. And it's funny,
How many hours of time do we have into clutching?
A lot.
It's the only thing you can do without, you're not changing the motor, you're not changing the tune, you're not changing anything. You're changing just
one variable.
Moving parts.
Yeah. And I think, what's awesome is, I think we have a really good baseline, but yet still every day we go and try something a little off of the baseline, and it's always good to have something to come back to.
How many times have you called me completely crazy?
Yeah, but
it's taking some big swings.
Big swings, but it's why, we've been able to land where we've landed, and we've got a setup that works for a lot of people, and our setup especially. So it's a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. Actually, it's fun when it works. It's crappy when it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's our biggest thing is, we know, some people don't even know or care that they're 200 RPM low, or that it fades on a long pole or whatever. But
I don't even want to ride the sled 10 feet,
dude. I'd rather walk.
I'd rather walk.
And we kind of joke about that, but it's the thing is you don't ever want to leave something on the table.
No.
And why would you? And, clutching is probably one of the biggest. Clutching and suspension setup is probably one of the two biggest things that from a price standpoint, relatively, those are, again, big bangs for your buck because you're getting the most out of your machine.
Yeah. You could put a 900 big bore on your sled, but if it isn't clutched right,
a stock 850 will
smoke it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we see that all the time. We see guys roll in here, Team Utah the other day, right?
With 68
gram weights. You guys ride 8 to 10, dude. You've been riding your snowmobile improperly set up the entire time.
Yep.
The entire time.
Yeah.
And and so we just see that all the time of you are not getting the free horsepower out of your snowmobile. It's free. Yeah. It's right there.
Yeah.
You just got to set it up correctly.
Yep.
Yeah. So, it's cool. First ride, you guys have seen a couple of the videos I've posted. Your comment on the post was,
there isn't a dollar that's safe.
There's not. And dude, I'll tell you the thing that sled has done for me is the confidence it instills. And that's what I love about the first ride is, so remember that line, I said, we don't get to ride this hill very much. And it was that real steep one next to that Avi debris from a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that hill is so steep. And normally you would look at that hill and you're like, man, I wish I had my boost sled. And I literally thought about it for about 0.2 seconds, and I turned right and I went up that thing and wheelied out the top, and my heart's pounding, and that is the fun thing for me. The first 10 rides on a sled like that is learning its boundaries, its capabilities, and what it can do. Mm-hmm. And that's what's so incredible about that sled. Yesterday, we were riding boost sleds, and we would literally, it was the way the snow was and the terrain we were in, we were going into head walls, at the base of them, slow as we could, and literally just turning up, just trying to not be able to make it. Mm-hmm. And we could make it. And every single one of those, I'm like, my 900 would have done that,
Yep. And It's funny just even thinking about like the way we look at terrain and the way we set up our sleds. Like most mountain riders, and especially nowadays, are setting up, 155 chaoses, and it's kind of just a different agenda that they're on. They look at you see it like the steep head walls and stuff, and they're like trying to flip over backwards and do re-entries and hop overs across it 35,000 times, where we're trying to come out of the trees below it at 60 miles an hour and get over it. Go over it. And like for me, my sled, I think I even ride a more planted sled than you do. Just because, I don't know, you're a lot better at probably managing it. But I really...
There's times it screws me. When I got on your sled yesterday, I'm like, damn, this thing goes forward really well.
There's a fine line there because it's still fun to play around and do that stuff. And when you need to do a hop over around a tree and do whatever around a tree, it is nice to have a sled that'll do that. But for the most part, we're setting up sleds to get a job done, not to play around down a little hill.
Yeah, and I think that's where if we talk about really one of the reasons that I probably have been putting that torque arm in the lower hole is because I'm trying to find that balance of, man, it's still cool to do, hopovers and reentries and all of that stuff on demand.
Yeah.
But because what we have really found this year, right, our snow is more like everybody else's snow, where they actually just go forward. You know, we're used to being able to literally, like, because of how soft and sugary our snow is, we could literally, like, backflip on top of ourselves and everything like that. And, now our sleds with proper snowpack just want to go forward. Mm-hmm. And so, we're kind of messing with setups there. But in the end, like, it is give and take, but both your and I's goal are to get to the top
as fast and straight as possible,
as gnarly as possible. Because here's what's happening, right, is we are getting into such steep terrain that if you have to lift because the front end is lifting, you're not going to make the shelf.
Yeah.
And you're going to be upside down. And so, that's where, it was kind of funny. I've been giving you some crap all year, dude. All year. You've been riding your snowmobile, and it's weird that all your side panels are broke and all your front bumper's broke and
different color running board.
Because you keep, like doing this thing. And I'm like, why don't you ride in lockout ever? You're like,
It's kind of fun.
And then yesterday, you're like, oh, I should probably try lockout. And you get to the top of that thing and you're like, huh, that's pretty
goes forward.
That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so for you guys who don't know, our Fox shocks have a lockout feature for that rear track shock. So basically you have 3 settings: soft, medium, and lockout. And it's funny. It sucks because without IQS, the electronic version, which again, from a weight standpoint, I'm running just the standard QS3s because the kit's about 4 pounds lighter versus going IQS. On my, I love IQS. I love the technology and everything, but from the weight standpoint, I run the QS3s. So what sucks now, though, is every time we pull up to something, I get off my side. I try to get there before you see me. And
go to lockout?
Every time Kyle sees me reaching down to go to lockout,
Time to turn the GoPro on.
Time to turn the GoPro on.
I like party mode. You
do like party mode. I like the top. But so I guess, Kyle, it's, to kind of wrap up this podcast about, it's fun building these sleds. It's fun. I like the pot of gold at the end, which is like, after all the hard work, after dude, it's so much money.
The crazy thing,
too.
How many sleds? Not quite to that part, just because you have some one-off parts. But how many sleds do we build like that for customers that get to ride them?
Yeah, this year we've
built a lot.
A lot.
They're like, what do they say? They want the same sled you got.
Yeah, I'm like, are you sure? You got. Better bring your big boy pants because it's it's interesting. It's so fast. Like that was the thing that one of the comments that you said instantly, like, holy cow, this thing is quick.
Yeah.
It's very quick to react. And it's no different than when I let Ross ride my titanium 155 turbo sled that he literally like upside down in a meadow. How do you ride this thing? He said. You have to, and it's pretty funny. The first test ride out, I was a mess, dude. First time I'm like upside down in trees. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to ride this like a man. I mean, you gotta be like, there is no hanging out and just riding at 80%. I mean, you gotta be ready because it's so quick to react. The motor is, the chassis is, all of that stuff, and it makes it just real fun. I love, you guys keep seeing these videos of like, I can't believe you keep fast forwarding your videos and playing them. And that's real time, I promise you. And it's what that sled does. And I'm telling you, it is. You feel like Luke Skywalker in that. You don't even know what Star Wars is. You're too young. But when they were on the little torpedo bikes running through the woods, and the farther you look ahead, the faster you can ride, and what you can do neutral.
If you're on the gas.
Gosh dang, that is fun. We really have fun doing that, don't we?
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't get any GoPro clips of it because I was too excited, but it was pretty interesting drag racing.
It's fast.
Your boost sled on my 900, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fast. Your sled is faster. It takes you a while to get to me, though. It's really insane how this sled gets up on top of the snow and just boogies. And I keep, the longer I keep going, I keep looking back. Is he coming? He's kind of coming. It's fast. Mm-hmm. It's really fast. And, I've got just over 100 miles on it now. And it's all I had hoped for. And what's exciting is this is year one of the Matryx.
Yeah.
It's only going to get better. We're going to keep finding things to make it, even more lighter, efficient, easier to ride. And, I guess the big thing I want to say is, I just am very appreciative of all of our partners who help us with projects like this. I mean, it's a lot of work. All the time that you put into it. I actually got my hands dirty a bunch on this one, which I enjoy, and then just to get to ride it. So we'll have a bunch more. Obviously, we've got a big reveal video that we're going to be launching, but we thought it'd be fun to do a podcast talking about just the ins and outs of it. And so hope you guys enjoyed this one. Lots of kind of tech stuff and kind of an in-depth look at the sled itself. And then just how much fun it is to not only build it, but in the end, ride it. So, Kyle, better stack those dollars, bud.
Nope.
This sled is...
Who's +2 this year?
+2?
Heydays.
What happened at Heydays?
Backpack challenge.
Oh, frick. Yeah, you got me there.
Cammy G's got video of the other one. I still don't know where I'm at on that one.
No, you said, I'm not going to charge you $1, but I'm not going to give you $1. It was a pretty fun line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. But the dollar challenges are about to get real now. And it's actually, because I'm riding just basically a stock, not boost sled, it'll be 2-to-1, right? So
whatever.
Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll knock another one out here shortly, and in the meantime, hit us up at on Instagram or messages. Actually, I don't. I'm so far behind. I'm like 750 emails deep. I got a few days off here. I'm trying to get back to you guys. I really appreciate all the comments and the questions and all the support this year. It's been incredible in what has been a very challenging year. And Kyle, our first month in, dude, has been pretty badass, huh?
Yeah.
So it's been fun, been busy, but we'll knock another one out here shortly. Thanks a lot, guys.